Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With growing hearts we see thee rise, the true and strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, Greg was pretty proud of himself. What is up, my friends? Welcome to another edition of the XFL Weekend Review. I'm your host, Mark Perry, editor of XFL News Hub. And on this week's show, I just want to point out that was not the Canadian National Anthem. That was actually the first Canadian Football League game on U.S. soil. I believe that was in Las Vegas. And they totally butchered the Canadian National Anthem. Now, how is it possible for you to screw up the national anthem of the league that you are now part of? Is beyond me. But that was in the 90s, and this is the type of thing that CFL fan is upset about and why they're very leery of any kind of talk when it comes to the XFL. Danny Garcia, The Rock, Redbird Capital, etc. But that was in the 90s. I don't think Danny Garcia, The Rock, Redbird would screw that up in this particular instance. I was especially going forward now because of what that happened. But yeah, this is the kind of thing that this is why CFL fan is so worried about what could potentially come with the XFL. Now, as your therapist, we need to rip off the Band-Aid and expose the things that have happened. U.S. fans don't really have an idea that this happened. I didn't even know it happened until early on when this whole thing started, talking about the XFL and CFL partnership merger. We'll get into that in a second. So I just wanted to play that for our U.S. fans so that they kind of have an idea of where sometimes things are coming from. And you clearly, I cannot recite the Canadian National Anthem. I can't sing it for you perfectly, but I definitely know that was not it. Now, I don't even know what that was. I don't even know how can you screw that up? How could you screw that up? This is the Canadian Football League. This is your league that you're part of, and you screwed that up. But Greg was happy. Greg was feeling it. At the end, he was rocking it. At the end, he was holding it out. He was feeling it. And I don't think he's invited to Canada anytime soon. Though, maybe that would be interesting to, even if he's still around or whatever, to get him on the show. If anybody knows Greg, have him reach out to us, XFL News Hub. I would love to get his take and the reaction afterwards. That would be really fascinating thing to talk about. But your therapist is here. Have no fear. On this week's show, we're going to talk about the CFLs delaying their season to August, plus a look at XFL cities versus CFL cities and potential XFL expansion cities. I'll get into that in a little bit. A couple housewarming notes before we get into all that. First, I got it wrong about Richard Petty talking about MLSE, the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. I had said last week that he had said Ted Rogers wanted to purchase the Toronto Argonauts. That was not correct. What he said was if Ted Rogers was still around, he would want to purchase all of MLSE and not have this Rogers versus TSN kind of thing going on there. I misspoke. At CFL_news, who is a must follow if you're a CFL fan or if you're an XFL fan going into whatever this new thing is going to be. Definitely follow him on there. He pointed out to me, he's totally right. And I will admit when I make a mistake. Failure is just feedback. That's all it is. I don't take it personally. And if I get something wrong, absolutely point out and be nice about it. He was nice about it. And I listened to it again and I was like, man, I totally did not get that right. So I appreciate him. So if you want to hear that, it's on a podcast. It's episode 115. It's called Richard Petty on the Future of the Toronto Blue Jays and Rogers Center, Bob McCowan podcast. So if you want to hear the whole thing there, mostly they don't talk about that kind of stuff, but those 2 points that I brought up came from that podcast. So you can check that out as well. I wanted to play the clip, but then it's somebody else's clip on YouTube, so I didn't want to get into that there. Also, you might have heard I was on Calgary radio last week talking about the XFL CFL merger, and my comment about a full merger, which I did say on the air, made me pause for a second because I didn't realize like how the reaction that brought. And I will get into that a little bit in the show where I am definitely backtracking off of that, especially after this last week. My excuse was this is like kind of vibe that we keep hearing in the Canadian media that it's going to be a full-on merger. After some backtracking a little bit, I'm going back to what I originally had said when we had the guys from 3 Down Nation on, which is I think it's going to be a hybrid league. It's not going to be this full merger. And I'll get into that as we get into the news this week. Also, this is the 100th episode of XFL Week in Review. I'm not having a big party or anything like that, but I am going to play for you after the commercial break the first ever episode. I kind of listened to a part of it, but I'm just going to play some of it because I think it's interesting that, we've done 100 episodes, so it's fun to kind of listen back. That episode took place on Thursday, February 7th, 2019. So that was the first episode, and now we have 100 episodes later about that. And speaking of all that stuff, we have an exciting announcement, a huge announcement next week on the show. I am going to just leave it at that. We got a big announcement about the future of where we're going to go and how things are going to play out here on XFL News Hub. That announcement will come first thing. We're going to hit it first as we get into the show, but that's going to be on next week's episode. You're not going to want to miss that at all. So, we got to do this stuff that we do in the beginning. How do you get in touch with the show? Podcast at xflnewshub.com with your MP3s or videos, or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Plus, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. We appreciate that. And give us a like and subscribe on our YouTube channel because we appreciate that as well. You might also notice that my voice sounds a little different because it was 100 episodes. I was like, let me get a new mic thing. So I got a new mic. We'll see how that sounds this week as well. All right, so first thing up, we're going to get into some of the news that happened this week. And first up, the big news, not a shocker, but big news. The CFL announced plans to return to play in August of 2021. The 2021 season will go on. So they said, quote, our revised target date to start our regular season is August 5th. To facilitate a 14-game season for our players, fans, and partners, we are rescheduling the Grey Cup to December 12th in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Of course, that's where it's going to be played. I say target date because their plans are subject to basically what's going on. And so they have to have a couple things happen in order to they need to get fans in the stands. And the idea is that they want to have at least 25% capacity in order to have fans to make it kind of worth their while. So if everything goes according to plan and the levels go down, then and fans can start coming back into the stands, it looks like then they can get a season going. I'll tell you what, I'm in the state of Maryland, and for the record, and you could see maybe right here, I got my first jab, bro. I got my first jab today, and I feel fine. It's not mind control. The government does not control my brain or any other kind of weird things you can make up. I feel great. I feel fine. We'll see how I feel tomorrow, but I'm just glad to be part of the solution. And hopefully, at least in the state of Maryland, we're one of the best states in the country as far as The daily positivity rate has gone down, and hopefully we can start opening things up soon in the right way, just based on the data. That's it. So if we can do it here in Maryland, I think Canada can do it as well. And if we're starting to think about, basically it reached this kind of tipping point where, now we're starting to have maybe an extra little supply versus demand is starting to shift a little bit. And we're at like 40%, 50% maybe in Maryland, at least had their first shots. So, in a couple weeks, we'll get that number up, and it's proven effective. The numbers are coming down. So hopefully in Canada, that can happen as well. Now, that's the situation with the CFL's season. And I'm with Reed and Paul. Reed had said on his podcast, XFL Podcast, that they're all about going to the Grey Cup. I'm all about going to the Grey Cup too. I'm all in if we can do that. And could you imagine the podcast that we had there? I don't even know if we make it out alive. I don't know. But it would be a lot of fun. So my brain is like, I got my jab. I got jab 2 coming up this month. And then I'm working on my I got my Hamilton Tiger Cats hat. And I got my passport. So I'll be ready to rock and roll come December. So I'm glad to know. And I can drive. I'll drive up to Hamilton. I can do that. So that's where that stands. But the question is for XFL fans, what's going on with the XFL? Well, Randy Ambrosie was actually asked about that in a stock interview, I guess you could say, with CFL, the CFL's website. And he said, quote, "Our discussions with the XFL have been very positive." He talked about they spoke with the alumni group, yada, yada, yada. What we're looking at and what we've been working on, and this is where it comes into why I'm kind of changing my tune. He says, what we are looking at and what we've been working on is improving our business model. Notice the word business model. We've made a lot of adjustments in the past number of months to make it possible that we've got the best business model possible. The discussions with the XFL are really focused on that. How would working together help to improve the business model? When you get to that answer, you nearly have an infinite list of possibilities and how you would make it work. What our fans really deserve and what our amateur football partners really deserve is a business that is good as our game. And I agree with that. That's what we're looking to deliver, et cetera, et cetera. Business model. So it sounds like from Ambrosie's comments that the talks are strictly based around helping each other and their business rather than this kind of full-on merger that some had suggested, including myself, on the radio. And I'm definitely backing off on that too. He uses the word business model multiple times, and I believe it is to make a point. We know the CFL has struggled with its business model for years, and the experience of Redbird Capital, Danny Garcia, and Jeffrey Pollock could help both parties. If the league remains separate but partners rather than being fully merged, it could really help spring football as a whole. I think what they're doing is they're trying. This is my new take on things, because I like to read the tea leaves, and I initially was like, there's no way this could work. It's got to be some kind of hybrid thing working in parallel. And then all I kept hearing from the Canadian side, remember, no one in the U.S. aside from us is really covering this. In the Canadian media, they were all like, merger, what we're hearing, merger, from their sources in there. And everybody's signing NDAs, so who knows who's saying what at this point, what is true and what is not. I found it peculiar, very interesting, when that Front Sports Office article came out and got picked up everywhere, where it was basically saying, some kind of like hybrid league and that they would have this playoff championship that was parroted by Pro Football Talk, which I was surprised, and he didn't say, the things that he said in the past about it. So part of me is like, I wonder if that was put out there to turn the gas off a little bit when it comes to this whole idea that there's this full-blown merger thing. Now, in Canada, they're continuing to keep saying merger, and life is over, and they're going to ruin everything. I don't think that that's going to be the case. And so that article made me think his statement about the business model, it makes sense that the XFL and CFL would talk business model before rules. You can't talk rules with the CFL until you have your CFO, which is your chief football officer. You can't do that. You can't have that conversation about football rules. Yes, there are guys that with a football background in Redbird, but they're not going to run the XFL. You need your CFO, your chief football officer, in place first before you can even have that discussion. So that means the rules are not being discussed. What's being discussed, and is what he said in that thing multiple times, the business model. The business model, as much as people keep saying this, parroting this twice failed league, which I saw it again on some other article, and I really want my 27 cents back that I had to pay for to read basically, which was nothing. Again, parroting that twice failed league. Well, apparently this twice failed league had a pretty good business model that your league now wants to be a part of and learn more about. They want to learn successes. Anybody who sits there and says the XFL was not a success has no idea what they're talking about. They have none. They've never spoken it. I've hardly bet you they've never even watched a game. They've never spoken to people that worked in the league, the people that worked with the networks. There's a reason why the Spring League, the TSL, has all of its games on Fox Sports. Would that happen if the XFL was a failure? The answer is absolutely no. There is no way the Spring League would be playing on Saturdays in May, this next month, if it wasn't for what they got with Fox. Fox loved the XFL from everywhere we've heard, that they loved it. So this narrative, the twice failed league, they had the business model. That's why they're talking. If you don't see that, I can't even help you. And so it got me thinking about the CFL in general. And I'm like, is this even worth it? And I started thinking about the cities, and because Toronto was a big kind of talk about this. So our man, Matt Nagashima, he wrote an article about potential expansion cities for the XFL amid the CFL partnership. Now, why was this out there? Because you kind of have to balance the cities out. And Danny Garcia had maybe mentioned about adding teams to the XFL. So he goes down the list, and I'll quickly go through them. He talks about Oakland, California, San Francisco area, Philadelphia, Birmingham, Alabama, San Diego, California, and Denver, Colorado as just some places that you could have an XFL franchise set up shop there. We had people from Birmingham, Alabama on the show. I think, and then so Rod Peterson had the same guest, AJ, from XFL Markcast was on. I believe he was on Rod Peterson's show. Again, I read and watch everything. Anything or everything I read and watch when it's discussing CFL, XFL stuff, even CFL stuff. He was on the show, and he had talked to some former person inside the CFL, and he had mentioned that some of the CFL franchises were worth $1. That's how bad the financial business model is of the CFL right now. And that's why they're talking to the twice failed XFL, because apparently their business model is better. But you're all in denial about that. So I was like, why is this even worth going down this path? I'm like, if the XFL, and this is why I don't think it's going to be a merger, because the XFL, in order to get more money and make more money, doesn't really need the CFL. They need its players maybe, but that's it. Do they really need those markets? So let's take a look by population and kind of where things kind of flush out. So I went to Wikipedia, and any of you jabronis out there is like, oh, well, Wikipedia is not real and it's factual. Like, just go somewhere. Go somewhere. So this is the list of North American cities by population. This is where the data starts to get interesting and where I think things are going and why it's not a merger. And the CFL will run separately from the XFL. This is just one of my takes. Well, first of all, Mexico City is the biggest out there. 8 million population. They're number one on the list. Are you telling me that if the CFL or XFL had a game the NFL wants to play in Mexico City, but if there was a franchise in the XFL that played in Mexico City, do you think that they could get 50, 60, 70, 80,000? I think if you stuck an XFL franchise in Mexico City, and I don't know how that would work, I bet you could get one game in Mexico City, bring in more fans than potentially 4 games in the CFL combined, because that city is so big. You could be off a little bit, but I think you could get 80,000 people to come to it. If you had the Rock show up there and a game, if they had their own team, or even if they were in their own league and had a game with an XFL team or a CFL team in Mexico City. They're number one, and they're right behind another team already in the XFL's market, New York City. That is the number 2 biggest by population. Number 3, also an XFL city, Los Angeles, and they can play anywhere. They didn't draw very well because I'm not a fan of that sports market, Los Angeles, per se. I think other places in California, you could probably do better. There's a lot of things going on in Los Angeles. Number 4, and same is Toronto. Makes sense. Now you're talking, okay, if I'm the XFL, I have interest in the Toronto market. There's no question about that. However, do I really need the Toronto market? Because one market that's basically equal to Toronto in some respects is Chicago. Wouldn't I want to just put a XFL franchise in Chicago and not have to deal with the CFL stuff? You could put a franchise in Chicago tomorrow. You don't think some of these cities would pay money, a fee of $100,000, $500,000 just to get a franchise, an XFL franchise in their area? You don't think that? I'm telling you, people want it, and people in the United States, which is where the bulk of the money is going to come from, you're not going to generate season ticket sales or any of this other kind of stuff if you're merged with a league and you're playing, the BC Lions or something. Like, versus having a franchise set up in Chicago that you run. That's why I'm like, I'm not buying this merger stuff. Let's continue. Houston has an XFL franchise. Havana, Cuba. Could you imagine Cuba having that would be kind of cool. Montreal, there you go. Another place that would be of interest to, I get that. That's a pretty big market. You'd want that market. Philadelphia, they don't have an XFL franchise. Phoenix, they're at number 11. Philadelphia's 10. Phoenix is 11. They don't have an XFL franchise. San Antonio was rumored to have a team potentially move to San Antonio. Having 3 teams in Texas would be crazy, but San Antonio would love to have a franchise. San Diego, that Matt had mentioned in his, they're number 15. I don't see any other Canadian cities here. Dallas already has one. Oh, there's Calgary, all right, at number 20. And Honduras, Mexico. You have San Jose. Then we have Ottawa. There's Ottawa. Austin, Texas. There's Edmonton. But then with every Edmonton, you have Jacksonville. You have San Francisco, which is San Francisco, Oakland area. Indianapolis, Columbus. Dallas, Fort Worth is really, both of those would be combined. Charlotte would be another place that you could have a franchise. I mean, this is just the top 50. Winnipeg is in there at 53. Cancun, could you imagine Cancun? Seattle is in there, and Seattle franchise did great. I don't see St. Louis anywhere. Washington, D.C. is, but then you got, some of these areas are combined people. So that's why, you have some of these places. So you combine those, but you get the drift. Is that that's why I don't think this is going to be a full-on merger. I just don't see it's even necessary. How does being merged with the CFL make the XFL money? Partnering with them helps the CFL, because you need the CFL. You want the CFL to succeed. Let them you don't want to steal their player. My assumption is that there's two things that they're talking about. Business model is one. What worked for the? I'll tell you this business model. I might have mentioned this the last show, or I don't remember this when I mentioned it again. But you think this business model sucks for the twice failed league? I had season tickets. I paid for 2 seats for 4 games. I paid $200. Okay, you don't think, regardless of your theory about this, is just facts. Regardless of your theory about the waning interest in the XFL, I couldn't find anybody to go with me, just as the whole what was starting. I couldn't find anybody to come to a game with me. I thought about going by myself, and I was like, you know what? I'll just take a pass on this one. I'll sell the tickets. For 1 game, I sold 2 of my seats for $200, $100 a piece. That paid for my season tickets. 1 game. And that was what, week 4, where that was week 5, 6? When there was no interest. That's right. I sold 2 of my tickets that paid for my season tickets for the whole year. And then they didn't have the game. I still got my money. I don't know how that guy got it. I assume they got a refund. I don't know how that worked out. But it was like I got paid, and then it was like 2 days later, everything shut down. If no one cared about the CFL, XFL, or the business model was bad, how is that possible? And my seats were good. And people were buying seats around me for more than what they paid for them. Does that happen in Toronto? Does that happen in Montreal? I don't think so. Maybe they do. I don't know. But this business model works, and this is what they're talking about. They're talking about business model. I would be like, that's the main thing, and that's what he said. That's what they're doing. And I would assume that kind of revolves around how they're going to deal with players, because they play at the same time. And a crossover. We should do some kind of crossover game. Also, it brings in the whole Mexico piece. If you look at this list, there's a lot of cities in Mexico that are pretty big as well. If you had a Mexico league, a European league, a Canadian league, and American side of things, there's no way that Redbird Capital would want to own all of them. There's no way MLSE would want to own all of them. You can't do that. But if every league kind of went by the same playbook, hey, we're just organizing ourselves together. You run your league, we'll run that league, and then we'll have some crossover. And that's it. That's what I think is going to happen. So relax, CFL fan. What the rules look like, I agree that there's no way they were talking about rules yet, because the XFL does not have anybody to talk rules yet. That's going to be there in the long term. When you hire a CFO, Chief Football Officer, then you guys are going to start talking about rules, because you don't talk rules unless you got that guy first. You just can't. Yes, the XFL has been down the path of talking about rules. They've done that before. We got that. This is a little different, but this is working with European leagues. This is working with potential Mexico leagues and propping each other up. They could kick ass together during the spring. You're talking about the betting. You're talking about television contracts. You're talking about the XFL potentially adding more teams. That's why I'm like, the XFL doesn't need the CFL at all. They can just let it go under if you want. But I think they have some things in place that could make their package stronger. And I don't think the XFL really wants to, at this point, expand to 20 teams, because that's a lot of money to put up. So partner with the CFL, grow your league, have a little crossover, help each other out. You still play your 8, maybe add a 9th team or 2 more teams before the season kicks off, because football is expensive. And maybe these guys can help each other out and build the game of football and have a strong spring league, because at the end of the day, what's going to hurt the XFL and hurt the CFL, and I think this is why they came to the table in the first place, is they can't afford to compete against each other. The XFL can't afford to steal guys from the CFL and pay them $1 million and vice versa. That's why they're talking. That's why they're not going to merge. And that's why it's going to be some kind of hybrid league with some games. And you're going to have a separate league XFL is going to do its thing. CFL is going to do its thing. You'll have a Mexico League doing their thing and a Europe League doing their thing, and eventually they'll all kind of play together in the middle somewhere with some crossover games. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think that's where things are going. I'm sticking to that no matter what. I am not going to fall for, not peer pressure, groupthink, which occurs a lot. I just watched a documentary about the Heaven's Gate cult. Can I even say that? I don't know if I get banned on YouTube. And there was like some kind of study where they put all these lines up. So there's like 4 lines, and there's like 5 people on a table, and 4 of them are all in on it, and the 5th person is not. And they go through and they say, all right, which line is bigger? Which line is the tallest? And then they go through a couple rounds of that, and they all get it right. And then all of a sudden, the 4 start not picking the tallest line, and the other person falls in line, even though and knows that it's not the tallest line, and just follows the crowd. I'm going to break away from the crowd, and I'm going back to my original thing. I think it's going to be a hybrid league. I don't think they're going to merge. I just can't see it from a business perspective. That doesn't make any sense. That's my take. That's my take on the expansion thing and the difference between the cities. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Of course, leave us a comment on the YouTube. Leave us a comment on Facebook. You know where to leave the comments. But I'm curious to what you guys think about that. On to other XFL news of the week. Bryn Griffiths and Robin Brownlee of the Outsiders podcast were on the Rod Peterson show. They're both involved in the Edmonton sports scene. I really thought that these guys, especially Bryn Griffiths, said some interesting things. That he talks about the demographic problem, which I think is for all football, sports in general. They're all struggling with, trying to get the younger demographic, and basically the things that CFL fan that's freaking out about on YouTube is not what the younger demographic cares about. He also said that several weeks ago he broke a story that at least one CFL team didn't want to play in the 2021 CFL season, and that the XFL might not want all 9 CFL teams. Again, this is going back to the idea that they're going to merge. I don't think so. I don't think the Argonauts are going to leave the CFL and play with the XFL. That would just shut the door on the CFL. So I don't know about any of that stuff. But one thing he said, which is what I'm bringing up, is that there was one CFL team that's more interested in playing the XFL than the CFL, and he was referring to the Toronto Argonauts, owned by MLSE. He said, quote, "I'm not surprised by who the team was that stepped up and said, we might be more interested in that league, the XFL, than this league, the CFL. The team in Toronto are trying to do anything they can to make themselves, I guess, the talk about entity, whether or not they are certainly not the flagship franchise in the Canadian Football League anymore, but they wield a ton of power." He also said that some CFL teams may not be down with this kind of merger. But again, no one really knows for certain what's happening. There's allegedly NDAs have been signed, non-disclosure agreements. So who knows what's going on with that kind of stuff. And until we have an official word, one of the other things that the CFL had said is they're working on a made-in-Canada solution. So that means that they're not going to get Redbird Capital money. I have talked about previously that if Redbird Capital was going to give them money, then yes, there was going to be a merger. There is no money changing hands, so that's why I don't think it's going to be a merger. They're just going to run separately. So I'm saying that's the only thing they care about, business model and players, and they don't want to run each other out of business. That makes the most sense to me. That's what I'm sticking to. There you have it. In other news, DC defenders Shamarko Thomas signed with the Ottawa Red Blacks. I'm so excited about the CFL season because I want to see my guys in the XFL playing in the CFL. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch that. Also, the European League, ELF. They really need to change the name to ELF from something else. But European League of Football, our own Josh Davis reported they released their divisions and schedule for the 2021 season. Haven't really heard much about that, but there are 8 teams, and we've got all that down there. We got the Hamburg Sea Devils, Berlin Thunder, Warclaw Panthers, Leipzig Kings, Frankfurt Galaxy, we remember them, Cologne Centurions, Stuttgart Surge, and Barcelona Dragons. Coolest name. Can you imagine Barcelona Dragons playing the Seattle Dragons? That would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? I like it. So, but the reason why we reported on that is to keep an eye on this league and the Mexico League, because we will kind of see what transpires with these guys, and it makes sense to kind of keep an eye on these things. If Danny, The Rock, Redbird Capital can organize the spring football leagues, CFL, Mexico, and Europe, and the United States, and into one thing and help each other out, spring football, that's a whole business model that has never been done before. All right, we're going to hit the commercial break, and we'll get to your social media stuff right after this. Stay tuned, my friends.
Here's what you missed on the XFL Podcast. What's up, Reed?
That's our when we're being asked to do that now. Coming up, spoiler alert in the show for AJ. He goes, I got to get a year from you guys. So I guess that's our thing now.
It's kind of become our call. I dig it. Sorry, Bronx. We took your little saying, and now it's kind of becoming a thing among the XFL, CFL people, but we're spreading the love. We know where it came from.
We have a great show today. I appreciate AJ from the Red Blacks, and then Dan Barnes coming on to talk. I keep skirting around saying AJ's last name. Do you notice that?
We'll get to the bottom of that.
Jakubek. But no, we have AJ Jakubek with the Red Blacks coming on, and then we have Dan Barnes. Lots of fun CFL, XFL stuff, continuing to educate ourselves and the listeners. I think people are appreciating that. I reposted our big Arash duel on YouTube. I had a lot of comments of, hey, it's almost better that you guys have, conflicting views. It adds to the legitimacy of your podcast. So I like adding legitimacy to the podcast.
What I'm looking to add is a plate of humble pie to Arash's dinner table.
Yes.
If you're going ahead with this, to me, you need a commitment and money that you're getting a television contract, and not the hope that you're going to get one. No, you need a commitment. If you're going to go with that type of schedule and completely revamp what you're doing, because, for example, in Canada, the television ratings are by far the best after Labor Day. So if you're revamping everything, you better be because you got contracts in hand.
Until there's meat on that bone, right? Or somebody wants to tell you what's going on, it's going to exist, and we all know it's happening. We all know they're talking to one another. So it'll exist in the background.
Of course, you can find XFL Markcast on XFL News Hub and wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube.
What's up, XFL Army? If you're a fan of the XFL News Hub and you have a telephone, which I know all of you do because you're sitting there playing on your phones all the time, then why not download the XFL News Hub app? That's right, it's on iTunes. It's on Android. We have an Android version and an iPhone version of the XFL News Hub app. So what do you get? You get the latest news from XFL News Hub, the premier source of XFL news in the universe. Plus, you get push notifications when we have breaking news. You will be the first to know. You can leave a comment on some of the news right from your phone. Plus, you get this podcast on your phone as well. Remember, you can leave us reviews on the Google Play Store or iTunes. It links to other social media, our other social media accounts, and so much more. Be in the know. I know you're on your phones. People are on their phones all the time. They never get off their phones. So why not just download the XFL News Hub app on your Android or iPhone today? All you need to do is go to the Google Play Store or iTunes and just type in XFL News Hub. That's XFL News Hub. Download our app on your phone today. All right, we are back on the show, and now it is time for your therapist, Mr. Mark, to clock in. Remember, we've covered the whole situation. We understand that we need to get over the whole national anthem thing. That was a bad look, and I don't think that would happen anymore. That was a long time ago. We're going to move past it. The idea of the twice failed league narrative, they clearly are interested in their business model If it was failed business model, why would they be talking in the first place? Because it's not. I just proved to you that it wasn't when I was able to get pay off my season tickets with one game in Washington, D.C. I had no problems selling those tickets very quickly. Therefore, the idea that the ratings were down and the interest was down is clearly not accurate, because I went to games for free because I sold my ticket. So there's your proof. And I would like to see that happen if anybody else in the CFL was able to do that in 2019, 18, 17, 16. Were they able to pay with one game, pay all your season tickets off? Maybe it's happened. I don't know. This was not a playoff game. This was a regular season mid-game. Another thing I wanted to point out, too. For the haters out there in the media, I hope that if they merge together or they hybrid together, if you're so disgusted by the change of rules and this, that, and the other thing, I hope you go and cover something else. Because I just think it's going to look pretty stupid that for the next potentially 2 years, crapping all over what's going to happen and then go turn around and cover it seems a little American, to be quite honest with you. It seems a very Fox News-ish thing for you to be doing. So I'm going to put that out there as well. Also, CFL fan. Again, this is Therapy Session 101. When you post and tweet us, tweet XFL Podcast, tweet our writers, saying that you're never going to watch it again, I bet you will. And no one cares if you say that you're never going to watch it again. You know why? Because most people don't stick with anything. I would love to take these people who have said that they will never watch the league again, and I brought up the fact with the NFL, they said the same thing. How many of these people actually follow through with anything that they've ever done? When was the last time these people that will say, I'm never going to watch the CFL again if they change the rules? Really? When was the last time that you went on a diet and you actually stuck with it? When was the last time that you said, you know what, I'm going to go to bed early, and you stuck with it? When was the last time you said, I'm going to stop drinking during the week, and you actually stuck with it? Do you really think that you're not going to watch the CFL? We know you will. You're going to watch what's going on. So save it, because you don't stick with anything. You're not that hardcore. And if you were hardcore and you stuck with things that you set out to do, you wouldn't be a troll on the internet talking about how you're never going to watch it again. So I am sure that the CFL and XFL could care less about the people that say they'll never watch it again, because you will. And if you don't, fine. There's Toronto Blue Jays baseball that you can watch. I nap through baseball. Baseball is so boring. You got to be kidding me. So you can enjoy your Toronto Blue Jays, and we'll just stick with our football fans watching football. I had to point that out. I'm your therapist. I'm your friend. I need to keep it real with you. That's the truth, okay? I'll leave it at that. All right, on to the social media stuff. Let's see how this goes. And maybe I glanced it, and I think it was okay. All right, first up about the European Football League. All right, maybe nobody can complain about this. Let's find out. Robert says, will be fascinating to see how this evolves. I wonder if there are alignment opportunities with the CFL and XFL. I agree with that. Javier says, I wonder what TV channel streamers will be on those games. I'm down with that. Daniel says, year-round football, hell yeah. Jared says, really like this. Yeah, see, we're all in. We're football fans. For the love of football. That's what this is about, for the love of football. Let's go on to that, but that was an easy one to start with. Let's go on to the next one. This one, next couple deal with the CFL. Let's see, shall we? CFL announces plans to return to play in August. Colin says, it would have been nice to hear how talks were going with the XFL. I agree with that, and they did mention talks with the XFL. It was very complimentary. Everybody's been complimentary. You know, the people that actually talk to the XFL are very complimentary towards the XFL. The people that have never talked to the XFL in the history of their life, they're the ones that aren't. Just kind of throwing that out there for you. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is like suspenseful. Are you kidding me? What would you rather do? Watch something on Netflix? You know what I mean? Or the next Young Rock, some suspenseful, like, I don't know, Stranger Things? Or would you rather check out the XFL Week in Review podcast and hear what CFL fans are about to say next? Let's check in again. On the Griffiths talking about the Argos stuff, which I found really interesting. Richard said, I am a 45-year follower and fan of the CFL and am more interested in what an XFL/CFL merger looks like. I love the game, but is no longer viable in the new world. Competition is fierce, and the league has knowingly struggled for 20 years to attract young fans and viewers. It has to change. Richard, keeping it real. Richard's keeping it real. Yes, you are correct. If the model just doesn't work, I will give you the idea that, you know what, the demographic. I think all sports are dealing with the fractured demographic. But I will tell you, the reason why they're talking with the XFL is because they had tapped into that. And why do I know that? Because it was actually at the games. I was there. There was families there, and there was, in DC, there was a ton of 20-somethings. Your yuppies, you're just out of college, a couple years out of college, tons of those people there. That's what they want. And that's why they're happening. Now, I heard this, bringing up the whole Vince McMahon thing, and why did he get rid of it if it was so good? I've explained that one before. Vince McMahon was concerned about his gate-driven business, which was the WWE. That was number one. That's his bread and butter. That's where he became a billionaire, not from the XFL. And number two, I believe, I've heard mixed things about this theory, that he tried to put it into bankruptcy to flush it from all the money that he owed and potentially trying to buy back. That's not necessarily the case, because it was brought up during the bankruptcy proceedings by the other party that were his former coaches and that kind of thing. Again, when they were talking about this bankruptcy thing, Vince said that was never his intention, and he has no problem walking away from it. He was a little offended by it, and said, hey, but no doubt Vince McMahon wants the XFL to succeed, and he's very happy that The Rock, Danny Garcia, and Redbird are involved with it. But he's concerned with his main moneymaker. The XFL would still be under Vince McMahon today if there wasn't that I just got a shot for today. So that narrative is a joke. But I understand why you'd bring it up. Why would he get rid of it if it was such a good thing? That's why. And that's it. He didn't know. And look, he wouldn't have been able to play this year either. So 2021 would have been done. 2022 would be done. Is he going to pay all those people? You know what I mean? So 2020, cut the season in half. He's gate-driven too. So why don't you ask the owners of the CFL? Because they're the same way. So that answers your question. Because they have the same business model as the CFL did. Except now things are a little different with Danny and The Rock, because they were going to take it to a different direction. So without gate and without full fans in the stands, it wasn't going to work. He couldn't do it. Not with something that at least TSN, the CFL had a TV deal. He didn't have that. They were trying to play it for 2 years at least and get a big monster TV deal after that. That was the goal. 2 or 3 years and a TV deal. Short-circuited it. Can't keep people on payroll. You can't, that's where you make your money, is people, selling out stadiums. So he let go. Somebody else bought it and wants to bring it back, and made the decision that they're not going to play probably until 2023 because of the same thing. They need that gate too. He was in the same predicament as your CFL was. On to, let's see what we got here. Oh boy, potential expansion cities. We got a lot of things on here. 40,000 people this thing reached. 72 comments, 23 shares, lots of discussion here. Let's see. Curtis says, I'm from Edmonton, and up here we have a rich football heritage. A lot of people in Canada are divided about combining leagues. Personally, I would love to see more added teams and competition. Unfortunately, I just don't see the Atlantic Schooners panning out after you know what. With that being said, if there is a full merger and more added teams from America, it brings in more competition. I enjoyed watching XFL, and for a fan of football of both leagues, who wouldn't want that? Bigger TV and more media deals too. It also creates more options to watch road games all over US and Canada, which would be really cool for tourism. I could see this future league definitely benefiting off of each other in many ways if they're going to be full merger. As for rules, take a bit of the rules from each league and come up with something. I'd love to see this merger happen. I'm just picking this. This isn't like I'm cherry picking. I'm just going through some of these things. I'm not cherry picking. Richard says something of critical importance when considering potential new U.S. locations, the ability to travel from Canada. We have 3 smaller centers, Winnipeg, Regina, Hamilton, that offer limited direct international travel, which wasn't discussed in this merger. The 10th CFL team that was accepted was the Atlantic Schooners. They'll likely play out at Halifax, Nova Scotia, a smaller airport. 20-team international league would be amazing, and I look forward to watching and supporting a league that offers more than being a farm system to the NFL. And there you go. Last one, Danny, San Antonio, military town, and the locals are football crazy. The commanders of the AAF had great support, as did the riders, WLAF, Gunslingers, USFL. Imagine they would bring back those names in the XFL. Tom said, there's no partnership. The CFL has nothing to gain and everything to lose by doing anything with the XFL. Tom says this, and then Calvin, Terry, some other people trying to stay positive, helping each other out there. That's good. On to last week's podcast. Dave says, if the XFL CFL moves to the fall, I'm out. The whole reason I latch on to alternative leagues is because it's not another football league at the time. There's no way, David, that the XFL at least would play in the fall. The CFL might, because they would be separate. We've heard people say, too, that the fall season is the big season for the CFL after Labor Day. So let them have that. Play more games if you want to. Just have a little crossover and that's it. That's it. Jerry, when they merge, they should rename the new league the North American Football League. They shouldn't try to play in the fall. That's for college and the NFL. They will not play in the fall. There's no way. No way they will play in the fall. Don't worry about that. They can't compete with the... I don't know why. Did I say? Tom says the XFL can merge D's Nuts. D's Nuts. That would be a fantastic name for this new league, is D's Nuts. Trademark it. Let's do it. D's Nuts Week in Review. Would be a monster hit. Okay. On to the next. Oh, this one's about Randy Ambrosie. Let's see how this one pans out. London says, talking about the Ambrosie gives an update about the XFL talks. London says a merger would be instant death of CFL. None of these new leagues have lasted their first year. Stay strong and support the great game we have made our own for 108 years. Lots of likes, 19 on that. Some replies. 100% agree. CFL can't survive. Maybe, but not. But XFL would be certain death. So you get the drill there. Jason says the XFL is and always will be a sinking ship. The CFL has over 100 years of Canadian history. Keep it Canadian. Okay. Lots of replies to that. I think the CFL should leave the XFL alone. That was from Chris. Ambrosie should go back and finish grade 3 first. Merging will end the CFL forever. So there you go. They're just saying Jack says we don't need the XFL. Ambrosi, take a hike. You get the drift. People aren't happy with him. Finally, the CFL Alouettes co-owner interested in the partnership. Again, you got to listen to the tea leaves, my friends, and listen to these owners. Nothing but good things they say about it. You know, they want it to be a fair deal. But a lot of these owners are new. Like, they've hardly played more than like 5 seasons underneath their team. They see the numbers. Remember, we just heard this past week that, you know, a former person in the CFL said that some of these franchises are worth $1. Sweet. I'll buy them. I can buy them for $1. Other than that, I'll pay everybody in Dogecoin. That's what you got to do. Just get in a Dogecoin. Fix CFL just like that. Your boy just figured it out. Everything in Dogecoin. Calvin says, if only the XFL was likely to survive. The field is littered with corpses. Okay, the past leagues. We get that. Ward says he has owned the team for 10 minutes. Who cares? Again. John says, just go away. Leave the XFL be. Hamilton said he's the guy with the money. John says you can stick the XFL where the sun don't shine. Oh, my goodness. CFL fans are really excited about this potential merger partnership. And again, I think everybody's getting all worked up over nothing. It's just going to be like a kind of hybrid thing. And the CFL is going to do their thing. XFL is going to do their thing. And that's it. I just don't think it's logically feasible between all the climates, you know, these different leagues, but being partnered together and working together to make each other's leagues stronger, which is basically what they've been saying this whole time. That's where we're at there. All right, so should we hit the YouTubes? Let's see if the YouTubes. I'm showing you what I got. That's it. Vol Saber says, talking about my appearance on CHQR radio in Calgary. He says, 100% support the merger. As far as rule changes, the only rule that is make or break for me that we need 4-down football. Keep the rouge if you want to. Keep the goal posts in the front if you want to. Keep the wider field, players in motion, deeper end zones if you want. All that really matters for success in the United States as far as rule changes goes is a 4 downs and 100-yard long field. Leonard says, if anything, I would argue that the 3-down game is better. Blah, blah, blah. We got that. Mike says, great show again. Like your ideas on the ratio rule. Much more thought than I had put into it. Maybe the rule should exist with a plan to eliminate the rule over 5 to 10 years. That's a decent idea. Over time, I think the league like this will make football more appealing to people all over the world, and you'll see greater football player development in Canada and beyond. The NHL had a vast majority of Canadian players way in the past in North America. Now look at it now. Tons of amazing players from the States and entire world. Looking forward to Spring League 2. This Canadian wants a merger and it's not too concerned about the differences, just want great football. There you have it. And like I said before, people that are hating on this idea, I think part of it is they were burned before. Part of it is they hate America anyway. And part of it is they don't like change. There's your 3 main reasons. 1, 2, 3. Right there. On to the next. Terry says the XFL should forget the CFL and concentrate on U.S. and Mexico. If they want in Canada, they should negotiate with the owners of the teams they want and let the others disappear. I mean, that is a valid thing. Put a team in Mexico and put a team in Toronto. You say, all right, Argonauts don't want to play in the CFL. CFL fans, you want to keep your rules and your 100-year brand? All right, well, the Argonauts are going to be part of the XFL now. Good luck. And I'm sure you could survive for a little bit. Maybe. But I don't care. I don't care what if you merger, great. If you don't merger, great. If it's 3 downs, great. If it's 4 downs, great. Whatever. I'm with the people. I just want great football. That's it. I don't want your baggage. Save it for your wife, your girlfriend, or your dog or your cat, whatever you're into, huh? On to, let's see what else here. Paladin Demo, our man. Question. Are we still using the hybrid model for scheduling, or is it going to be a 40-game season now? I think I think if anything, the XFL will add games, which will be great to kind of balance things out a little bit. The A-Bomb talking about my appearance. He says, I hope it does. Talking about the merger. You heard, if you didn't hear it, Mark Stevens, I think his name was, he said that I hope Mark is wrong. That's what he said as soon as he came out of break. I hope Mark is wrong. Leonard says, hey, I just want good football. Just to make the roster size 30 and then have the possibility to extend roster spots up to 16 more spots that must be filled with nationals as defined by the CFL rules. Don't want to play Canadians? No worries. Play with your core 30 players. Need more? Sure. Look north. Interesting. That's the kind of thing I like to hear. He also says part of the problem with MLSE and Argo Angle is that MLSE decided to make Bill Manning president of both TFC and the Toronto Argonauts, which obviously compete with each other for fan and sponsorship dollars. Interesting. One has grown in attendance while the other has struggled at the gate. The Argos still have the decent TV viewership compared to the MLS counterpart, but get outdrawn almost 2-1 at the gate, and that's a great point too. Leonard's killing it. Next one. I'm glad you brought up the pay difference because I think you really underestimate when it comes to competitive balance, which we see happening a lot in NBA, MLB, and NHL, or essentially any other major sports that cross borders. There gets to be a trend where players start to ignore locations based on outside factors such as location, lifestyle, earning potential. What we are seeing in the three previous examples is that the Canadian-based teams are needing to heavily overpay American athletes to persuade them to play outside the U.S. This is typically due to the fact of that international tax regulations can get messy. So the dollar-to-dollar Canadian, he just goes on to a bunch of other stuff, but makes some good points there. Chris says TSL stealing the thunder. Talking about the spring league. And let's see. MB, finally, he says, so many haters. Argo season ticket holder here. I am all for a full-on merger. All the best North American leagues have merged and evolved over the years, and the CFL needs to evolve too. We can pick the best rules from both the CFL and XFL to create an awesome game. Move up the schedule so it doesn't compete with the NFL, and boom, we're set. I think people are afraid of change, but if we don't change, we will die. Fingers crossed for the CFL to play in 2021 and hope 2022 looks even better with some new American teams to play against. Just because we're looking towards the future doesn't mean we're erasing the past. I'd rather evolve than watch my team disappear. Great point. 100%. Knocked it out of the park. That's it. That's the deal. Do you want your team to disappear? Well, we've been through this before. We'll do it again. Yeah? Get yourself a credit card and overdraw that credit card. Eventually, your debt comes to a point where you cannot do anything but declare a bankruptcy. Like, you could kick the can to the curb and get your little tax rebate and put some money on that. But if you're just overdrawn, like, that's why we have bankruptcy laws in this country, because you just dug yourself in such a hole that there's just no way out. And you can kick the can, but now, you know what I mean? I think, the vid accelerated the can for the CFL. There you have it. Not too bad compared to last week. I think they've all went away maybe. Onto the Twitter real quick. Richard O for real. We always like to hear from him. Give him a little shout out there at Rich O for real. He said, hell yeah, let's just hope that they've all played good games and maybe one day are back in the XFL CFL. Just wish The Rock and Danny Garcia would tell us more about this league. Maybe the upcoming season, maybe the merger with the CFL. Yeah, we would love to kind of get some kind of notification from the XFL as to what their plans are. Because, if the XFL wants to play in 2022, which they're not going to, they need to hire coaches now. Because you're running out of time. And if you have a draft, that needs to happen in October. Like, you're running out of time. And it's just not going to happen. I think they're going to ramp stuff up during the summer of 2022. Something that Mike Mitchell had wrote about. The question is, what's going to happen with the CFL in 2022? And I think the CFL will continue. I think they will start playing this kind of hybrid thing in 2023. I mean, you also have contracts with CFL players. Who knows what's going on with that. CFL gets through the season. They start talking. They have a plan. XFL turns on the lights, starts hiring coaches. They kind of have this kind of framework in place. They've already been talking for a long time. And then during the summer, they have tryouts and bringing in players, and then we kind of build up. So 2022 is going to be the year that the XFL builds up to something big. I think you're not going to see, there's no way you're going to see XFL teams on the field in 2022. There's just not enough time. They have to turn on the lights, and they said they're pausing for a reason, because they're not there yet. You need the CFO first before you get anything in place. And I think they just want to kind of let this summer play out, and then we'll see. 2023 is when the XFL will return. The question is, will the CFL have a 2022 season, and what would that look like? I would assume that it would look like maybe some rule changes, and that's it. Because they really would love to just get a full season under their belt without any drama either. But they're going to have to make changes in 2022, because during the CFL season, you're going to have the XFL draft, which happens in October. And then, these guys are going to be done in November and then have to get back in. Like, whatever they're going to do is going to happen during that time frame. So it will be interesting to see. They're just going to get through the season. But hopefully we get some kind of word from the XFL going forward. But this is draft week, so I don't particularly see in the NFL. I don't think we'll see anything anytime soon. I think things are going to get a little quiet till we get into June, perhaps. All right, on to YouTube, or on to the Instagram. Talking about this cities. Joe Alberti says Chicago. Fred GM whatever says San Antonio. Sacramento or Oakland. Chuck says BD Dalton. Bunch of numbers. San Diego or Norfolk. Oregon, where the last Blockbuster is. I just watched that documentary. And go Philly. Philly Steampunk. That's another good city as well. All right, let's get to your emails. First up, John says XFL/CFL will play no games until 2023. Okay. This means the CFL can just stop playing their games in 2021 or 2022. That's just tough, man. I don't think you can do that. Even if a partnership or merge is signed, it doesn't matter until 2023. Agree with him there. The size of the field dictates the downs and players on each side. Go with the larger, wider field, 11 players and 4 downs, and you risk basketball scores. Go with 12 and 3 downs with smaller fields, and the defense has a huge advantage. And since on average U.S. XFL cities have a longer time to change over stadiums, harder to dig into tundra, since no games for the XFL until 2023, might make more sense to make XFL stadiums bigger. The XFL doesn't have any stadiums. Unless Dwayne Johnson wants to upgrade all the stadiums at once. Push the league until 2025. That's not going to happen. In 2020, the XFL stopped playing for the same reason CFL didn't start playing, the pandemic, nothing else. The XFL doesn't have a network deal. If it did, I could see the XFL playing this year, but since it's not costing Dwayne any money to postpone the league until it's ready, why not take the time to do it right? Larger fields, smaller fields. Okay, maybe. But what I can't understand is in 2020, the pandemic stopped the XFL, which started in February. Just because the CFL can't play a game in February doesn't mean the XFL can't start playing in February of 23, etc. XCFL matches from late May to August may have the CFL versus CFL in the fall because they're all still not competing with the NFL. Finish with the Grey Cup in Mexico City. Sounds like fun. Pandemic stopped the XFL, not March Madness. And the Kentucky Derby or golf will stop the XFL. And you have this time to take advantage of it. One last point, 3 million Canadians watched the Grey Cup in late November. While there were NFL games being played, that's competition. 5 million Canadians watched the Super Bowl while there was what? Question mark. That's what the Super Bowl's competition. A Sunday afternoon movie. True? A bunch of middle-aged animations. Seriously, only 2 million more decided to tune in to There's Nothing Else On. I understand more did watch it, but if you look at the economics of season tickets, a lot of the younger people could pay for unlike blah, 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 licensing fee. That's your big hook. these things I can see. Keep talking about that. John checking in. Appreciate that. Mike says, hey there, question for the show. So I recently saw that ever since the sale to Dwayne Johnson, that some of the old AAF teams on their Twitter tried to get some fan support to potentially get them noticed by Dwayne so they could possibly be integrated into the XFL 2.5. I'm not calling it 3.0. Interesting. If they decided to allow a few AAF franchises to join the XFL 2.5, what teams do you think that would be? San Antonio Commanders, San Diego Fleet are perhaps the most likely, as they were some of the more popular teams. Personally would like to see this happen as opposed to rumored CFL merger. That's a great point that he makes. In the United States, what would generate more interest? An XFL AAF merger, where you just take the AAF names, or an XFL CFL merger. And I think in the United States, there would be a ton of buzz and a ton of chatter if it was AAF and XFL. But it ain't, because I don't know what the deal is with the rights to all that AAF stuff. Ted checking in said, just listen to the show, and I have 2 comments. Cool. Don't let the internet trolls get you down. Everyone has an opinion, but the whiners are more noticeable. Yes, I agree with that. I had my pity party, and then that was it. Near the end of the episode, you were wondering about the players being paid in American dollars versus Canadian money. In the NHL, all players get paid in American dollars unless it's otherwise specified in their contract. If a football player has a half-decent agent, then he or she would have it covered. Interesting. Any American player, to be, he says, any American player can avoid most Canadian taxes by living in the United States. Most major Canadian cities are close to the border. When Mark Messier played for the Vancouver Canucks, he lived in Washington State. Great show. Ted checking in. Interesting thing there. Some good points. And finally, Joe checking in. Joe's version of the league in 2026 XFL/CFL therapy. This is Joe checking in. Add 11 teams to the CFL and split them into 4 divisions with 5 teams each division. This gets the XFL or CFL to 20 teams magic number. In the East, Hamilton, Alouettes. Oh, you got Hamilton, Montreal, Ottawa, New York, Toronto. Central, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, DC, St. Louis, Chicago Hitmen. Yeah. South, Memphis Maniacs, Birmingham Iron, Dallas Renegades, Houston Roughnecks, San Antonio Commanders. West Division, BC Lions, Seattle Dragons, Calgary, Edmonton, and Portland. This gives BC Lions a couple of geographical rivals like the MLS Cascadia Cup. Clumps everything pretty well geographically and gets you into that magic number of 20 or so teams. So the network or streaming services has a good catalog of games each week. Lots of betting, too, on that. Joe checking in as well. All right, my friends, that's it for show number 100. Very excited. Oh, we didn't play. I just realized that now. So let's do that. We got through the social media stuff. You guys want to hear what the first XFL episode number 1 of XFL News Hub. Let's listen to it now.
Maximum action, let's go. More ball, fewer infractions. This begins in 2020. The future is near. More access, more everyone, more everything.
February 6th,
This is our moment, our story to tell. This is history begun. This is the XFL.
What is up, my friends, and welcome to the first edition of the XFL Week in Review. I am your host, The Mark, and on this show, we're going to explain a little bit about who we are and why we are here, plus a little news on Bob Stoops, potentially coaching, and plus the latest on the XFL TV deal and more. But before we get into everything, how do you get in touch with the show? You email podcast@xflnewshub.com with your MP3s. It's like your phone calls or your thoughts. Or you can use on Twitter. Just use the hashtag XFLWIR. Remember, cutoff time is 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays when we record the show. Remember to leave us a review on iTunes, and we will read it on the show. So, let me introduce you myself. My name is The Mark. I have a background in podcasting, so let me give you the origin story. I actually come from the WWE world. So I own a site called allwrestling.com, and shocker, we have a podcast called All Wrestling, wait for it, .com Week in Review. Yes, it's true. I know we're so creative here. It's unbelievable. So I'm a WWE guy, pay-per-views, the wrestling events, all that kind of stuff. And I've had wrestling sites since I was, it's been 15 years of all different kinds of wrestling websites. Actually, probably even longer. Started with Impact Wrestling. Then I sold that to TNA Wrestling, and then it switched to All Wrestling. But doing podcasts, actually, my claim to fame, not only did Impact Wrestling, if you know anything about the wrestling world, they got their name from me. The second thing I am world famous for is I was one of the first ever people to do a wrestling podcast. And now it is saturated with every wrestling dirt sheet, which is what we call the rumor sites, have podcasts. Wrestlers are in podcasts, but I was one of the first. But I'm also a football fan. I've been a football fan my whole life, grew up in Long Island. I was a Jets fan. I actually moved out to Maryland for college, and I stayed here, started a family here. I actually lived in Baltimore the first year when the Ravens won their first Super Bowl. Then wound up becoming a season ticket holder all the way to the Ravens won their second Super Bowl. I got a nice little pin for being a season ticket holder. And my allegiance, of course, switched. My family, kids grew up in Maryland. They were Ravens fans. I was a Ravens fan going to the game. So I kind of switched my allegiance from the Jets to Baltimore Ravens. So, we were talking fantasy football leagues. I'm in 4 of them. We're talking DraftKings. I play that all the time. Even collect stickers, like at Target. You can go and get the little magazine, and you can buy little stickers. Like me and my wife will sit there. We'll get a couple packs. Actually, I'm looking at my desk now. We have a couple packs, even though the football season, the NFL season is over. I have those stickers ready to go too. We have to open those up. So I have a background in WWE website. I'm a football fan. So when Vince McMahon came out and said he was going to bring back the XFL, that had me intrigued, because I've been looking for something to diversify. I've been involved with the wrestling business a long time, and I wanted to try something new. Now, I have a couple websites out there. One of them is Destiny News Hub. You're getting the picture here, XFL News Hub, Destiny News Hub. And that site's actually doing well. My son and I work on that, as well as a great writer, Jamie, making content, doing things for the XFL or for Destiny, the video game. If you guys are into video games too. Of course, diehard Madden player until the game kind of sucks. The whole deal. So, not only doing the first ever pro wrestling podcast and being involved with the WWE for so long, Vince announced the XFL. So I thought this could be interesting, because I know I've followed Vince McMahon for a long time. Dude has got tons of money right now, and feels different. And I was like, well, at least if Vince is going to do this, the amount of money he's putting up, and he's got tons of stock, billions, that he's going to do this for a couple years. So why not get started? So a year ago, grabbed one of my great writers from All Wrestling, said, hey, let's do an XFL news site, and we'll just start on the ground floor. It was pretty much within a week of the announcement of the XFL, we started making content. Really just focusing on the history of the old XFL. You go to XFL News Hub, you can find all about it. From, Tommy Maddox, did he hate me? Who was that guy? Vince's background, what happened to the XFL, the history of the XFL. We kind of focused on that, and then news started coming out. And then they announced that Oliver Luck was going to be in charge of the XFL. And I was like, man, this intrigues me, because in the past, when the XFL started, it was really just a mishmash of craziness and last minute decisions. So the XFL started between Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol. And we'll get into that history later. I'm sure you guys know the history. If you go to XFL News Hub, search us up on YouTube, we got a great podcast clip of one of the guys who was behind the scenes, a WWE guy, tells some great, really interesting stories about his time with the XFL with Vince. It was just very disorganized. Now with Oliver Luck in charge, that had me intrigued. So we kept going with the news. We kept adding news, and the site was just, kind of dead. And then the announcements started coming up about what cities, and then the site took off, and it's been gaining steam ever since. And that's when I took a relook at this thing and said, I think we're in for the XFL, and we should start a podcast. So I wanted to start a year away from kickoff and start a podcast. So this will be a weekly podcast where we'll focus on news. We'll go over the headlines of the week. We'll get to your emails and phone calls and a question of the week. And we also like to go over the best of social media comments as well, because people are interacting with so much. We're the biggest Facebook group for XFL on Facebook. We are the biggest. We're actually competing with XFL themselves. We're like neck and neck. So you can find us there on Facebook. We're all over social media. So everything from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just look up XFL News Hub and you can find us and follow us. And just go to xflnewshub.com. We even have a Pinterest page. And you can find all that social media. So you can follow us anywhere. So what is the deal with this show? Well, it's going to take basically what we did with allwrestling.com Week in Review. We go over the couple headlines of the week, talk about those. Then we get what really makes the show is people's phone calls and emails. And we have people that will call in every week. We call it phone calls. But really what they do is they just, at home, you create an MP3, record yourself. People will do sound effects. They'll put music to it. And then they will send it to us, and then we play it on the show, as well as emails. A lot of people just like to write emails. They'll send an email. All those things you can do. Podcast@allwrestling.com. So what the deal is, we'll do the news first. We'll go over emails, podcasts, or emails, MP3s, and we'll go over the social media, and then we wrap up the show. My goal for this show is really simple. I want you're busy. I know you got a lot of things going on in your life, and XFL hasn't really started yet, but you need a quick 20-minute, 30-minute podcast on the way home while you're jogging, maybe while you're doing the dishes, whatever you're doing, where you just want to kind of get caught up with what's going on in the world of the XFL until we get into the season. And this is really exciting for me because WWE is basically always on, and there's a season, there's no off season. Now, right now we're in the middle of WrestleMania season, which has been the best storylines and the most interesting stuff happens. But WWE is every week, Monday, Tuesday, Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views every month. It just never ends. This is interesting because it's the climax all the way to the season and playing championship, then off season. So it's got this different flavor to it. And it's fun for me because I'm excited to talk about fantasy. We'll definitely have a fantasy football league. We'll get listeners to be involved with that. I actually did a fantasy XFL league back in the day when it came out too. I remember that as well. I don't think I had Tommy Maddox on it. So, and this show is about you guys. It's the fans. I am no expert on shotgun, double flag, offense. I never played football. I played Madden. I was really good at it. I probably should be a head coach in the NFL, but I decided to do web stuff instead. But this is I'm a fan, and this is a fan show, and it's about you guys and your take and what you think and us getting into discussions. And if you want to be part of the show, again, just email me, podcast@xflnewshub.com to get involved. And that's what the shows looks like. We'll do that every week. And we're here 52 weeks all the way to leading to the season to begin. And I'm excited because there's coaches coming. There's teams. I'm so excited about logos and merchandise and players and so coaches and schedules. And the fact is I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So I am working towards having season tickets to the DC XFL team. That's how much I want to go. I want to get behind the scenes. I want to be able to interview players. I want to be able to go to games. And I want to do a podcast from a tailgate from the first ever. That's my goal. The first ever XFL game in DC, the new revamped. I want to be there, and I'm going to record a podcast while we're tailgating. Heck, we might even do it live on YouTube. Like, this is about the fans of the XFL just talking, because this is just fun. Football is fun. And I really think they're going to do something unique with it. And that's why I really opened my eyes with Oliver Luck. And before we get into the headlines of the week, I wanted to talk specifically about Oliver Luck
and Charlie Ebersol. So what?
All right. Well, there you have it. Very interesting to listen to. I haven't listened to that at all until just now. A couple interesting things. One, as I sold All Wrestling to a company in Canada that a lot of hockey fans are familiar with, that owns several hockey sites in Canada. So it's funny to come full circle with that. I believe I was the first ever person to have a pro wrestling podcast. A coworker of mine had told me that I should do that. And this is before one of my daughters was even born. And she is turning 16 this year. So that's how long I've been doing podcasts on and off. I had other people do it after a while, because I especially during my wrestling run, like I was into it, then I wasn't into it, but the site was still running and making money. So I've been doing this a long time. I also, when I set goals, I make it. And it's funny that I mentioned the tailgate because myself and Connor Falk were there. First game, live on YouTube, streaming show. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. And I think what's really nice about hearing this for me is a reminder of what this is all about. I said it on the first episode and I'll say it on the 100th. I'm no expert in this. I'm not shotgun gun double flag. That was the best play in Madden when we played Madden in college. It was like unstoppable play. That's why I mention it. It's about the fans, and this show is about the fans. I'm the only one in any podcast I've ever listened to, whether it was wrestling or XFL or CFL or anything, where I read all of the stuff that fans write because I just find it interesting. And I want you guys to be involved with the show. I would love, when we were at our peak for All Wrestling Week in Review podcast, I mean, we had like 20 people would record their take with sound effects and music underneath. And they would send it in. And then, it was like every week they would just record themselves talking and coming up with great takes. And then it was like the show is huge. And the show, I mean, thousands and thousands of downloads. I mean, I think way bigger than the XFL show is now because it could never get there because without it playing a full season and, most people aren't going to be into it at this time of year. But they will when things come full circle. But this is what it's all about. It's just about the fans. And then at the end of the day, it's fun. I don't take myself seriously. I screw up. I screw up names. I screw up facts. I screw up, and I just own it and move on. It's just fun. It's supposed to be fun. And really, the CFL, XFL thing should just be fun. Think about the players and think about what kind of something new and exciting can come from this. And some people aren't going to like it, and they're going to complain about it. And they're the vocal minority, honestly. I really think so. Judging from people's reaction, people message me all the time off the record. Lots of people do. And across the board, they're all like, they're excited about it. So, and when I set out to do something, I do it. And I don't do it half-ass. And if I'm all in, I'm all in. And so I'll leave that at that for our little teaser of our exciting announcement next week after our 100th episode. So if you want to get in touch with the show that's been around for 100 episodes, email podcast@XFL News Hub with your MP3 or videos or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. And, of course, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that as well. Join us on the Discord. I want to hear from you guys, and I want to know what you think. I'm telling you, one person's opinion is really 20 people. And when somebody gives me an idea or something like, hey man, you should do this more or change this about that or, whatever. I think that's a good thing. And it's helpful. And this is this XFL is your league. Whatever this league becomes, it's not mine. It's not Danny and the Rocks. It's not Redbird Capital or MLSE. It's not Canada's. It's the people's. It's the people's league. It's the fans' league. Those are the ones who are paying for it. Those are the ones who are going to support it. So remember that. And you're not going to get everything you want. I don't know when you grew up in Christmas time and you gave your list to Santa Claus, you think he gave you everything? I bet you some of you have already gotten coal multiple times from how you behave. You've gotten coal from Santa. I bet you. This is just fun. And we'll have fun. And no matter what this journey takes, hey man, this has been the craziest thing. If you'd have told me that a you-know-what would have shut things down and I had to get jabbed today, not once but twice, just so that I can like not have issues with that. And, you know, all these people dying from it. And aside from space aliens coming, that's my only other thing that I'm like, yo, that might happen. And shut football down again. We're gonna right to 2023. It's gonna be the first game. I'm gonna be in DC. It's gonna be Hamilton Tiger Cats against the DC Defenders. Canada's team. I keep wanting to say Canadians team, but that's not right. Canada's team versus America's team. I'm gonna be there, and then a spaceship is gonna come down and land on the field, and that's it. And then they cancel the season. And then you're going to have arguments. Oh, I don't think aliens should be allowed to play in the XFL, CFL, whatever it is. And then we're going to deal with it again. And we're going to have to shut things down for years, talk to the aliens, see if they want to play. This is going to happen. And that's going to be episode 200. We're going to be talking about space aliens in episode 200. Hopefully not. Hopefully we'll be talking about games and players and everything like that. So it'll be a fun journey, man. This is just a journey, and you're along for the ride with that, my friends. So I appreciate you stopping by. Remember, xflnewshub.com/xfl-podcast. And remember, we got a big announcement next week. I can't wait to tell you guys what it is, but I'm going to wait till next week to do it because I wanted to enjoy this 100th episode. That's it for me, folks. God bless. Stay safe out there. Get your jab on like I did. That's it for me, folks. And I will see you all later.